Hi everyone, welcome back to Coffee Books and Rain. I'm Rachel. With me is little Leo at the moment. We got our little guy. He was on the bed. He wanted just a little bit of attention, and right now he's just kind of hanging out in my lap. So he may join us for this episode, and he may want to go back to the bed before we're done. So we shall see. But we are talking about More Weight, a Salem story, and it is by Ben Wickey, and if you know anything about Salem, then this may be a very interesting book. Why? Because it's a graphic novel. Now, I will say that one of my only real critiques for this book is because I had the ebook, and it only seemed to be available on my NetGalley reader, which meant I had to log in on my computer and actually read it from the screen there. Probably a good thing that it wasn't on my phone or my tablet, because some of the words were a little bit difficult to read. They do look handwritten, as perhaps most graphic novels might be, but they were just a little bit sloppy, so it made it just a little bit difficult to make sure I was understanding. And I had the screen fairly large size, so I wasn't trying to jip myself on size limit because I have a fairly big computer screen, and so it just made it a little difficult to read at times. But let us dive into the summary, and we're going to go from there. Every word is an accusation, and every whisper kills. This staggering graphic novel explores the infamous Salem witch trials and the long shadows they cast more than 300 years later. 1692 is a year of terror. In Salem, Massachusetts, Giles and Martha Corey are forced to confront their troubled past when accusations of witchcraft plunge their community into a violent moral panic. Based on true events and set in 3 centuries, More Weight is a unique inquiry into the Salem witchcraft tragedy and the misunderstood city now synonymous with it. It is approximately 532 pages in paperback, and it was published by Top Shelf Productions on September 23rd of 2025. Again, I had the ebook, and I did see, as I just kind of Googled, that there is a little, like a 1-minute video from potentially the publication company, so I may link that below just for you all to see it. I think it's a great way to show some of the art without me breaking any copyrights. I may put a couple pictures up along the way. I haven't decided, because the thing is I can't screen grab it from my phone and then toss it in here. And I didn't read it on my laptop because, again, it was too small on my laptop to be able to read all of the words. Let me put him on the bed. He just doesn't seem like he's getting comfortable. There you go, buddy. There you go. So sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure he was comfortable, and it just seemed as though he wasn't relaxing the way he sometimes does. So he may just be feeling a little antsy with the weather outside, and that's fine. So I did find on publishersweekly.com there is a kind of a small article regarding this particular book as well. And I think this book, I picked it up because the cover was very interesting. And I am so sorry, but this particular person in the hat, I thought was an angry cat. It's not. It's supposed to be a representation of Giles Corey. However, in this particular cover art, I thought it was an angry cat in a cloak, and I was very excited, and I wondered what that had to do with the Salem witch trials. It doesn't, because it's not a cat, and so I was also a little disappointed at that. But that is Giles Corey, and so this particular, I don't know if you know the story of Giles Corey, and I'm going to be incredibly brief, but he was accused of witchcraft himself. Men, of course, were also accused. Of course, women were much more accused, but he was pressed to death by rocks. And so they would put rocks on him in order for him to confess. and he just kind of kept yelling, more weight. And so I do think that's where the title of this book comes from, is more weight. He was innocent. I mean, heck, I guess he could have been dabbling in the dark arts, but we don't know because history only tells us he was accused of this. And I feel confident based on the way the book is going that he was probably not dabbling in any dark arts with any evil spirits of any kind. However, he testifies against his own wife, and then he is arrested himself, and then he refuses to admit to being a witch because, of course, he's not a witch, and he was trying to blame his wife for it. Well, she's not a witch either. And so I think she was, in this particular graphic novel, we learn that she was perhaps tutoring somebody named Ben with reading. But again, none of the ladies that we know of, like Sarah Good or, who was one of the other ladies that was Osborne, was pointed a finger at. I was like, as I was reading it through between the past couple of days, because again, 500 pages is quite a lot to get through, so your percentage bar along the bottom does not move forward very quickly. However, I liked the artwork. I thought it gave a really great atmosphere to the story. We already have Salem, which is dark and has a dark history, so having a lot of black and white artwork gives it that ambiance that it needs. So I'm not 100% certain why people only gave it almost just 3 stars. I'm very curious. It looks like the average rating for this particular book is approximately 3 stars. And I think it looks like there is okay, so I'm just going to read Rod Brown's first sentence before I really go too far into it. It says, there is a worthwhile history of the Salem witch trials buried within these 534 pages, but the effort required to dig it out is simply too great. Now, I will completely agree with that, because that was probably my biggest, my biggest critique is, yes, the art was well done, and man, you have 530 something pages of really well drawn graphic novel art, but I thought it was a little bit slow. We could have made it a little bit shorter to get the story to move a little bit better. Atmospherically, we could have potentially even made this 2 parts, and that way it would have felt a little less cumbersome. But overall, I am always quite fascinated by the story of Salem, and how I think at one particular point I was talking to somebody or reading something, and there was a potential and of course allegedly, that some of the Salem witch trials could have been triggered by ergot poisoning, which is a fungus that grows in grain. And so potentially some of these people were hallucinating. And so let me just Google ergot, ergot poisoning. Yeah, if you actually Google ergot, ERGOT, and Salem together, there is a theory that suggests that the Salem witch trials were caused by a condition resulting from eating rye grain contaminated with this fungus, which can cause symptoms like hallucination, muscle spasms, and delirium, which supposedly could explain some of the strange behaviors of the quote-unquote afflicted. Now, there is also a theory that these girls who were accusing some of these ladies of casting witchcraft upon them were also just being kind of terrors. They were potentially just lying. And that's also a possibility as well. I think at least in this graphic novel, it was 4 girls, kind of youngish girls, ranging from the age of 12 to 15-ish. So I don't know, teenage hooliganism perhaps, but they were blaming these individuals who maybe they just looked weird. Maybe they were I don't know, you know. But the thing is there is also the theory that these girls were just being terrible people, and they blamed these women, and then they didn't realize how far it would go to the point that people were actually getting unalived. So there is that as well. And so we do dive into a little bit of, let's see, what else we got going on. We've got, I'm just finding the, okay, yeah. From there, the narrative spirals outward and upward, revealing the cultural context of the witch hunt trials as well as the future they impact. Conversations between Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and Nathaniel Hawthorne. And I do believe it says that Hawthorne is here a descendant of the judge in the Salem witch trials, but he added the W to help kind of give some separation, because apparently the judge was Hathorne, Hathoth, yeah, blah blah blah. Anyway, the H was then added to help try to give some distance between him and his ancestor. So that's very interesting. The city of Salem still to this day is a very popular place for people to visit with regards to not only the Salem witch trials, but just witchcraft in general. And I mean, I think it's everybody has their own opinion on either what witchcraft is, or the people who practice it, or just thoughts around it. And I personally find it fascinating. Like, if you're not a fan of that, that is okay. We can all agree to disagree. But I find it fascinating. I also find fascination in manifesting and all of that sort of stuff. And I never discount something that could, potentially be a source of, I don't know, I guess it's hard to, what is it? Source of good karma? I think that's what I'm trying to put it into words. But overall, this book is really good in my personal opinion, but it is almost too big. It's probably 200 pages too big. I think we could have stopped at 300 or 350 and we would have been doing great. I like the very beginning couple of pages where we are following this ghost in a sheet through the city of Salem, kind of modern day, as people walk around and talk about the various places and look at the headstones. And so for those first couple pages, you see this ghost, and we don't know who they are, but they just kind of wander off into the distance, and then the story begins. There are a couple of quotes at the beginnings of various chapters, which are either about Salem or about various things surrounding that area, and so those were really good as well. But all of that being said, I think it is very good. I'm going to probably give it 4 stars because I really enjoyed the history behind it, beyond the Salem witch trials, but into what different things it led to. So that was all engaging. But we could have either broken this up into 2 or 3 books to make it more palatable and maybe make it not so girthy and kind of cumbersome, because it does feel like a slog a little bit of the way through. Now, you can tell someone's hard work and effort went into this, but again, reading it becomes a little difficult. I do kind of wonder if I can find a physical copy when it comes out and just see the readability, because if I was having troubles on my computer screen at work, which, yeah, it's probably about that big. So fairly good sized computer screen at work, and I have it, on the full page so you can read that full page at a time. Was just having a little bit of difficulty making out the handwriting. It was not too small. It just felt like the handwriting was just a little messy. But that's my thoughts. But with all of that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. I really wanted to cover this not only because it was more historical. It is. Let me just look real quick. It is considered historical fiction and witches and comics and graphic novel. Um, but I think there is enough, of course, nonfiction in this as well to be able to play with that. I do wonder which parts were considered to be the fiction, because like a lot of this sounds like the stories that I've heard growing up, just kind of all pushed into one book. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we have all been misunderstanding Salem for a long time. Maybe it was ergot. Maybe it was not. Maybe it was just hooligan children. Maybe it was the devil hanging out in Massachusetts instead of in the Georgia. Devil went down to Georgia. Um, Maybe he was in Massachusetts at the time. I don't know. But I do want to thank you all for tuning in. I haven't really covered very many graphic novels, which is again another reason I wanted to pick it up. And I did think this one had some merit, especially with the fact that we are getting close to the witching season, and thought that a good... See, now I thought this was a little bit more nonfiction, so that was another reason I picked it up, but that's fine. That is okay. Still thought it was really great. But thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not liked and subscribed already, I hope you'll consider it. And I will see you all on the next page. Have a great one. Bye.